The 9 days I spent in a stranger's house before I had to leave with the sheriff. Hey, I read Reddit stories that I can't stop thinking about. Some of them I read once and forget, some of them stay with me for weeks. This one stayed with me. It's from a guy who lived in Southern California about 10 years ago. He rented a room from a stranger for exactly 9 days. By the morning of the 9th day, he was leaving the house with a sheriff in the upstairs hallway and his girlfriend running the entire situation downstairs with a notebook she had bought at a gas station the night before. I'm going to read it to you the way he wrote it. First person, his voice. Just know going in, this isn't my story, it's his, and he's okay. I'll tell you a little about how I know that at the end. Okay, here we go. I rented a room from a stranger for exactly 9 days. By the 9th morning, a sheriff's deputy was standing in the upstairs hallway of that house while I carried boxes past him. My girlfriend was downstairs running point on the entire situation with a notebook she had bought at a gas station the night before. And the landlord was holding his cat in the doorway shouting at us to leave. A year later, that girlfriend said yes to me. I tell you that part first because it's the only part of this story that has a happy ending and I want you to know, going in, that I'm okay. What I am going to tell you about now is the strangest week and a half I have ever lived through, and the moment I understood that the woman I was dating was the most competent person I had ever met. I want to back up a little so this all makes sense. I had just moved to a new city in Southern California to start a job I had been chasing for almost a year. The job started on a Monday. I needed to be moved in and ready by Sunday night. I had a tight budget because I'd spent most of my savings on the move itself, and on the first round of clothes I'd need for the office. I couldn't afford a full apartment yet, so I did what a lot of people in their 20s do when they need a roof in a hurry and don't have the deposit for a real place. I found a room for rent in somebody else's house, owner-occupied. Just me and the homeowner sharing the kitchen and the living room and one of the bathrooms. The kind of arrangement that works fine if the other person is also fine and turns into a slow-motion nightmare if they're not. The listing looked normal, the house looked normal, the guy looked normal. He was probably in his mid-40s, friendly enough, told me he worked in insurance. The room was furnished. There was a TV in the common area we could share. He had a cat that he introduced me to and that I petted respectfully because I am a cat person from way back. I signed a written lease, paid first month's rent and a security deposit and moved in on the first of the month with most of my stuff still in cardboard boxes because I was planning to unpack across the first 2 weekends. The first day was fine, the second day was fine. I went to my new job on Monday. I came home Monday night. He nodded at me from the living room. I went up to my room. We didn't really talk. I figured that was the whole arrangement. We were renters and landlord. We weren't supposed to be friends, and that was exactly how I wanted it. On Friday, my first Friday of my new job, I got a text from him while I was at work. He said there was a strange smell coming from my room and he wanted me to take care of it. I read the text twice. I didn't know what to make of it. I texted back and said, okay, I'll check when I get home. I went back to the meeting I was sitting in and tried not to think about it. When I got home that evening, I went straight to my room and I sniffed around like an idiot. I sniffed the carpet, I sniffed the bedding, I sniffed inside the mini fridge that I had brought with me. I opened the dresser drawers. There was no smell. The room smelled like a hotel room. Faintly like the previous tenant, maybe faintly like dust, but nothing offensive. I went downstairs and asked him to come show me what he meant. He came up and he stood in the doorway and he sniffed the air for a second and he said it was much better now because he had already come in earlier and opened the window. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. This is me, not him. When I first read this line, he had already come in and opened the window. This is where I went, oh no, because the lease said he couldn't do that, and the guy was telling him about it like it was a favor. I've rented a room from a stranger before. I know that exact feeling of standing there going, do I make this a thing or do I let it go? He let it go. I would have let it go too. Okay, back in. I just want to pause and let that sit with you for a second. He had come into my room earlier that day while I was at work to open my window. Because of a smell he said he could smell from outside the door. without telling me he was going to do that. And in the lease, there is a clause in the lease he wrote that says he is required to give me 24 hours of written notice before entering my room, except in actual emergencies. A smell is not an emergency. I said something like, "Hey, I appreciate you trying to help, but the lease says you need to give me notice before you come in." He kind of shrugged it off. He said he had a headache from the smell and he just needed to air the place out. He asked me about my last place. I told him I had been living in a shared house with a couple of roommates before this. He asked what kind of people they were. I said, "I don't know, just people." He said something about how my old apartment must have had a lot of strong cooking and that the smell was probably soaked into my belongings. I said that didn't really sound right. My old place was pretty normal, but okay, sure. I closed the door of my room and I sat on the bed for a while. I didn't know what to do with this information. He had been in my room. The smell was made up. I had paid him almost $2,000 between the security deposit and the first month rent 2 weeks ago, and I had nowhere else to go, and I had a new job I could not afford to mess up. I slept badly that night. I went out on Saturday to spend the day with my girlfriend. When I came back, I noticed that the window in my room, which I had deliberately left open, was now closed. The vent was open, which I had closed. So, he had been in there again. Maybe to close the window because of the cat, maybe just because. I went downstairs and reminded him, more firmly this time, that he could not be coming into my room. He said, "Okay." He said it like a person says okay when they don't actually agree with you and they're done with the conversation. Sunday was Easter. I got up early and went with my girlfriend's family to their church and then to brunch and then to her parents' house for the afternoon. I didn't get back until almost 8 o'clock at night. When I got to my bedroom door, I saw 2 pieces of paper taped to it. 2 pieces. The first one was a notice to vacate within 30 days. He had decided he wanted me out. The notice didn't really explain why. It also said that as part of the vacate notice, I was no longer allowed to watch the TV in the common area. I had not watched that TV once, not for a single minute. The second piece of paper was even weirder. It was a notice saying he was giving me 24 hours of written notice, and after that 24 hours had passed, he could enter my room at any time he chose, for any reason or no reason, until I moved out. I stood in the hallway holding these 2 pieces of paper for probably a full minute. I went into my room and I shut the door. I did not go talk to him that night. I had work the next morning at 7 and I was already exhausted from the day, and I knew if I tried to have this conversation while I was tired and upset, I would say something I regretted. I texted my girlfriend a picture of both notices and she said the same thing I was thinking, which was that this was about to go off a cliff. Monday after work, I sat him down in the living room. I tried to be reasonable. I asked him what was going on. The first thing he said to me, and I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life, was, "I thought we were better friends than this." Dude, I have known you a week. He started cycling through reasons he wanted me out. None of them really stuck. He accused me of having illegal stuff in my room. I told him I didn't. He said he had friends in the police department and he could have them come over with dogs to check my room. I told him to go ahead. There was nothing to find. He moved on to telling me that the lease he had written had a clause that said if any conflict arose between us, after good faith efforts at resolution, he had the final say on everything. He said that was the part of the contract that mattered. He said because of that clause, he could change any other term of the lease at any time, unilaterally, and there was nothing I could do about it. I tried to negotiate. I said, "Look, this isn't working. Let me just leave. I'll find another place by the 15th. You give me back my security deposit. You prorate the rest of the month's rent back to me since I won't be living here. And you give me a little bit to cover renting another moving truck. We can both move on." He said no. He said he was willing to let me leave by the 1st of next month instead of the 5th, so I wouldn't have to pay for the extra 5 days. That was the only concession he would make. He said he would not be returning my security deposit. He said he was planning to use the entire security deposit to do things to the room. He listed them. He said he was going to pull up the carpet to check the padding underneath for any stains. He said he was going to steam clean the carpet on top of that. He said he was going to repaint all the walls. He said there was a hinge on the closet door that he thought I had broken, which I hadn't, and he was going to charge me to fix that too. I was sitting on his couch, listening to this, and I was doing math in my head, and I realized that the amount he was describing was more than my entire security deposit. He was building a case to charge me extra on top of what I had already given him. He then said the thing that really tipped me off, that I was dealing with somebody whose internal world was different from mine. He said he had friends who were judges. He said he had practiced law before going into insurance. He said if I tried to fight him on any of this, I would lose in court because the judges in this county knew him. He said he would make sure he was home whenever I was home for the next 30 days. And if I didn't like it, we could quote-unquote just be miserable together. He said the 24-hour notice he had given was enough to satisfy the lease, and so starting tomorrow he was going to come into my room whenever he wanted. He said that was his legal right. I let him finish. I said, okay. I went up to my room, I sat down at my laptop, and I wrote out an email to him summarizing everything he had just told me, line by line, including the part about him entering my room whenever he wanted and the part about the judges. I sent it. I did this because a girlfriend of mine, not the one I'm marrying, an older girlfriend from years before, had told me once that when somebody is acting strangely, the most important thing you can do is create a paper trail, time-stamped, in writing, sent to them. I owe that girlfriend a thank you note I have never sent. Tuesday I went to work. I came home. I went straight to bed. I noticed in passing that he had removed the printer and copier from the common area, which seemed odd, but at that point everything he was doing seemed odd, so I filed it away and went to sleep. Wednesday is the day everything broke open. I was at work and I got a phone call from a sheriff's deputy. He was professional, he was calm. He said he was at the vet's office. He said my landlord was there with his cat. He said my landlord had reported that he believed I was responsible for something that had happened to the cat. He didn't get into specifics. He asked me to come down and answer some questions. I want to tell you something. I have loved cats since I was 6 years old. My family had 3 cats growing up. I have never in my life hurt an animal. I have removed spiders from rooms instead of killing them because they have faces, and I can't bring myself to. The idea that anybody anywhere in any official capacity was being told that I had hurt a cat made me sick to my stomach. I went outside the office and I sat on a bench and I shook for about 5 minutes. Hey. Real quick, from me. This is the part where reading this story stopped being entertainment for me, because the cop did call him. The cop did believe the landlord enough to make the call. That's a real thing that happened. The landlord said the words, and the uniformed officer picked up a phone and dialed this guy at work and said, please come in to talk about the animal cruelty report. Anyone can call the police on you and say anything. That's the part I keep thinking about. Okay, there's a lot more. He's about to leave the house, and the next 12 hours are kind of incredible. If you need a minute, take one. Otherwise, back in. When I went down to talk to the deputy, he was reasonable. He could see I was upset. He asked a few questions. He listened to me explain the situation with the landlord. He took notes. He said something non-committal about how he had to follow up on every report and that he would be in touch if anything came of it. As far as I know, nothing ever did. But sitting in front of a uniformed sheriff's deputy answering questions about an animal you would never harm because the man who you rent a room from has decided to weaponize his own cat against you, that does something to your understanding of the world. I called my girlfriend and I said I'm leaving the house tonight. I don't care about the money, I don't care about the lease. I am not sleeping in that house one more night. She said, okay, come stay with friends, I'll set it up, I'll be there. That night she had already lined up 2 of our friends to host me. She had also called the sheriff's department herself and arranged for an officer to come do what's called a civil standby. That's where law enforcement is present during a move, so neither party can claim the other one did something wrong. She knew about civil standbys because her father is a contractor and he had told her years ago that you do that any time you're worried about a confrontation. I had no idea this was a thing you could request. She did. We arrived in the evening. 2 of our friends came with us. My girlfriend was driving. She had a clipboard. She had bought a clipboard. I want to say that again. She had stopped at an office supply store on the way over and she had bought a clipboard, a yellow notepad, a pen, and a small tub of cleaning supplies and a hand vacuum, because she said we should not be using anything that belonged to him while we did the move. She had thought all of this through in the time it had taken her to drive from her place to the house I was sitting in. Unknown to us, my landlord had also called for a sheriff. He had also had time to call 2 people over. There was a man at the house who introduced himself as his brother. There was also a young blonde woman whose role in any of this nobody bothered to explain. They sat in the living room while we moved. When the sheriff finally got there, he was friendly and professional, but he also did not want to be there. He talked to me, he talked to my landlord. He decided that my girlfriend and the brother would be the 2 designated point people for any communication during the move, so that I and the landlord didn't have to speak to each other at all. My girlfriend nodded calmly and said that was fine. The brother nodded too. The sheriff stayed for about half an hour, watched the start of the move, decided everything was peaceful enough, and left. The actual move took less than an hour because most of my stuff was still in the boxes I had moved in with. Our friends helped me carry. My girlfriend ran point. She cleaned the room with the supplies she had brought. She vacuumed the carpet with the hand vac she had brought. She wrote out by hand on the yellow notepad on the clipboard she had bought an entire informal property inspection form. She came up with the categories herself. Walls, carpet, furniture, fixtures, closet, bathroom shared. Personal items removed. She left columns for the landlord to mark whether each item was in acceptable condition or needed work. She then asked the brother if he could please bring the landlord upstairs to do the inspection of the room. Both of them came up. She handed him the clipboard. He looked at it like he had never seen a clipboard before. He started pointing at things. A tiny dent in the doorknob that was about the size of a pinky toenail. He said it hadn't been there before I moved in. I knew for a fact it had been there because I had noticed it on day 1. There were scuff marks on one wall that had also been there on day 1. He pointed at those. This is the part where I really wished I had taken move-in photos. I had not. I had been in a hurry. I had been excited about the job. I had not thought I would need to defend myself. A friend of ours, a woman who is a realtor, came up at this point because she could hear them in the room, and she knows what proper home inspections look like. She started gently filling in the form herself. She wrote down what he was pointing at. She wrote down her own observations next to his, so there was a record of both. He looked uncomfortable with somebody else writing on his behalf, but he didn't object directly. He then said he wanted to do the final inspection during daylight hours. He said he didn't trust artificial light to show him everything. He said my girlfriend could come back the next day at noon for the official sign-off. She said fine. We left. We went to our friend's place. I slept for 10 hours straight and then I cried in the shower for a while the next morning, which is something I had not done since high school. My girlfriend went back at noon the next day with her father, who is a quiet, large, intimidating man who builds things for a living and who does not say much. When they got there, the landlord did not let them come in through the front door. He directed them to walk around the side of the house and come in through the garage instead. They went along with it. When they got into the garage, there was a campaign sign leaning against the wall. The sign said, "Elect for Superior Court Judge," with his name on it. Quick reality check. He had told me he was an insurance agent. He had told me he had practiced law before. He had told me he had judge friends. Now there was a sign in his garage that suggested he had run for Superior Court Judge himself. My girlfriend and her father didn't react. They walked past the sign like they hadn't noticed it. They went into the house. He took them up to my old room. Later, when we got home, we looked him up. He was not actually an attorney. He had no bar record. He shared a first and last name with a local judge, but a different middle name. The judge was a real person. He was not that person. He had somehow obtained one of that judge's old campaign signs, or printed one off and left it in his garage where any guest would see it. I still don't know exactly what he was trying to communicate by putting it there, but I know it was supposed to make us scared. It didn't work. It made my girlfriend's father raise one eyebrow, which is the closest thing to an emotional reaction her father has ever shown in front of me. The inspection was strange but quick. He pointed at a couple of small scuff marks in the closet. He claimed there were stains on the carpet that needed professional steam cleaning, even though the carpet was visibly clean and I had only been there 9 days. My girlfriend offered to bring back proper cleaning equipment if he wanted to verify. He waved that off. He sprayed the carpet with the Febreze she had brought and said, "Okay, no more odor." He signed off on the form. It looked like we were going to walk away with the security deposit. Then my girlfriend asked him about the prorated rent for the rest of April, the portion I had paid for and would not be using, about $400. He turned. The mood in the room changed in about 1 second. He said I did not deserve any of that money back. He said since I had been so insistent on enforcing the terms of the contract when I had complained about him entering my room without notice, he was going to also enforce his side of the contract, which was the 30-day notice. He said I should not have moved out so quickly. He said since I had chosen to leave on my own, anything I had paid for the remainder of the month was forfeit. My girlfriend said something like, "Okay, but if that's where we're landing, you should know we are going to end up in court over it, and I would hate for it to come to that." He looked at her. He said, "We have nothing more to say to each other. You need to leave my house right now." They went to leave. My girlfriend realized halfway down the stairs that she had forgotten the key on the kitchen counter. She had also not gotten him to sign anything stating that the tenancy was officially vacated. She and her dad got in the car. They drove 20 minutes back to her place. She wrote up a quick settlement form with blank lines for amounts and dates. She figured he might calm down. She and her dad drove the 20 minutes back. "Okay, I'm almost done. There's one more part, and it's actually the part that made me want to read this story to you in the first place. Before I read it, if you've ever had a landlord like this, or a roommate, or a neighbor, I'd love to know. Tell me below. Sometimes when I read these, I think this can't be common, and then the comments show me it is. Last part. This is the part where the door opens, and the landlord is standing there holding the cat. The cat is fine, by the way. I keep wanting to tell you that. Okay, back in. When he opened the door this time, he was holding the cat. The cat looked fine, for the record. My girlfriend's dad was filming the encounter on his phone. She offered him the settlement form. She offered to negotiate. He refused to look at the paper. He said to put the key on the porch and go. He shut the door in her face. She rang the doorbell one more time and said calmly through the door that it was in his interest to talk. He shouted from inside the house, "Go away! Stop harassing me!" She dropped the key on the porch. They left. That was the end of the active part of it. We went back to our friend's place. I had cereal for dinner and watched something stupid on TV until I fell asleep on the couch. Here is the part I really want to tell you. We did not have to take him to court. About 10 days after we left, I got 2 checks in the mail at my new address. One was for the full security deposit. The other was for the full prorated April rent. He had returned everything. We never found out why. My girlfriend had left, on the kitchen counter when she went to give back the key, a stack of printouts. The printouts were the California tenant law sections about security deposit return timelines and the penalties for landlords who fail to return them in bad faith. She had printed them out at her dad's office the day before. She had highlighted the relevant parts. She had stapled them. She had put my forwarding address on the top page in case he needed it. I think he read them. I think after we left sometime in those 10 days, he sat down with that stack of paper and he understood that the law as written did not actually let him keep my money the way he had been planning to keep it. I think he understood that if he kept the money, he was going to lose more than he kept when I sued him. I think the part of him that wanted to play at being a judge realized that real judges were not going to be on his side. I do not have a theory about the cat. I do not have a theory about the sister or whoever the blonde woman was. I do not have a theory about the sign in the garage. I do not have a theory about what he wanted from me in the first place, why he picked the room listing photo and chose me from whoever else applied, what he thought was going to happen when I moved in. I do not understand him, and I have given up trying. What I understand is this. I was 25 years old. I had moved to a new city for a new job. I had not yet figured out who I was as an adult, and I had not yet figured out what I needed in a partner. In 9 days, a stranger forced both of those questions in front of me, and the woman I was dating answered them on my behalf with a clipboard from an office supply store and a tub of cleaning products and a stack of highlighted printouts. I asked her to marry me about 14 months later. She said yes. In the kitchen of the apartment we eventually got together, and I want you to know that I did not propose because of the landlord. I had been planning the proposal for months. But I think I knew on the night of the move, while I was watching her hand a brother I had never met before a clipboard and ask him politely to bring his brother upstairs for an inspection, that I was going to ask. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. That's the whole story. I hope wherever that man is now, his cat is okay. I hope whoever rents that room after me knows what they are walking into. I hope I never live next door to someone like that again, but if I do, I hope my wife is the one running point, because she is better at it than I am, and I am happy to admit that. That's the story. The reason I know he's okay is because the post is from 2015, and a year later he came back and said they got the engagement. So we know that part worked out. I think about her clipboard a lot. I think about the fact that she had bought it at a gas station on the way over. I read these because I don't always know what to do with them, and I think saying them out loud helps. If this one stayed with you, let me know. Thanks for listening. See you next time.